Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. On each episode, we interview recovering addicts and learn their story with addiction. Through exploring personal journeys, we get a glimpse of the depths addicts fall to and their path in recovery. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. My name is Kevin, and I am an addict.
Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, we say hello at the person at meetings, Steve. Mm-hmm. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm giving you a bad time, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we introduce ourselves. With us is our co-host, Josh.
I'm Josh. I'm an addict.
Hi, Josh.
Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Steve.
Hello, I'm Steve M2.
Steve M2. Are you an addict?
Yes, I'm an addict.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. All the way.
I'm so sorry, man.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know I'm lost.
I'm just having fun, man. So today we have with us our friend Steve, and he's one of many Steves in our lives that mean a lot to us. So we appreciate you being here. This episode is also recorded at the kitchen table in Vicky M's house, which was also Steve M's house. So it's kind of cool because Steve M2 sat at this table with me for many years doing step work every other Thursday. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
step work and a lot of other work.
Yeah, we read all the literature here at this table. Mm-hmm. So anyways, it was really cool.
When you say all the literature, can you go through that real quick?
All the literature.
Yeah, no, what is it? So Living Clean, Basic Text, It Works How and Why, Guiding Principles.
We didn't have guiding principles yet.
At that time, no.
So then the IPs.
We did all the IPs.
All the IPs.
What else you got? Is there anything else?
We do. We would read it. Did
Step Working Guide?
No, we didn't do the step working guide.
No. That was then during those times that was considered the Devil's Handbook.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Voodoo still.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It was. It was a long process for that book.
One thing I'm going to
It's still a long process.
Yeah.
Kevin, we did do, but you weren't involved, I don't think. We did do the Guiding Principles. The book, the Guiding Principles.
Yeah.
We did that.
It's a good book.
Yeah, but it was just so tedious and mind-boggling.
I remember Steve told me about that.
Remember?
Yeah.
Right. And there was a couple of us that talked about it. It was two of us that talked about it together. And we went to Steve and said, man, this is just too much. It's too tedious. Can we just not do this? Because we were part of the way in it. And he mulled it over for a few minutes and said, you guys made a commitment, you know, and so we need to stick with it. And so we did. I mean, I did. The other guy, other sponsee, he didn't. And he didn't participate in any more of our groups together.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but he made me stick to that commitment.
You know, I was thinking about working out of that Living Clean packet that we just got recently. I was thinking about how if that was part of the Living Clean book, it would feel like the Guiding Principles book. Like it would kind of, it would make it
that
like the
packet.
Same. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I haven't really seen it. Yeah.
It's pretty tedious too, to me anyway.
That's the one that we just got.
Yeah.
The one we're working on. Okay, so I'm just now getting into it. I think Vicky sent it to us.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting into it now. I had never seen it before.
We're finishing it up.
You
We have 2 more sessions.
Oh yeah, that's pretty fast.
No, we've been on it for a while.
A year or two.
Probably over a year.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Well, yeah. So that's kind of cool. So I mean, we're gonna
Thanks for going over those.
Yeah. We're gonna ask some questions, right? Mm-hmm. 4-step questions. But what was it about was there anything about your childhood that like stood out that you can look back and go, oh, this made me feel a certain way that I didn't want to feel, and so I started getting loaded to cover up those feelings? Kind of like, how did it all start?
The catalyst.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily a catalyst. I know I didn't feel good about what went on in my household. My father or stepfather was the type of guy that he was a masculine kind of guy. And my mother married him because she had me and she needed to take care of me. And they used to hang out in bars and stuff like that. And then I remember that when they got married and she had my sister first, she would go down to the bar, and my father didn't like it, and they fought. They had, and he actually would beat her up, and so I got in touch with, physical abuse in the household, which I didn't like that, and at one point in time, it happened over a period of years, and I remember they got into it one time, and he cut my mother with a knife and hit her leader vein, and I remember her and I running across the street to the laundry room with the blood just shooting up out of her arm like that, and he eventually left town, went to Detroit, was gone for a couple of years, and then came back into my life. Nothing had changed.
Can I ask you, did he leave town because
Yes, he did.
He might get arrested?
Yes, he did. Eventually, he got arrested in Detroit because the warrant was out for him, and they brought him back.
He had a
wound up
Because of the knife thing?
Because of the thing, yeah. He cut her with a knife, and they brought him back, and she started going back to see him, and I don't know what the promises were made. You know how we do. We make promises, and we say, I'm going to change, and
but
things like that.
But I love him.
Exactly.
It'll be different this time.
And when he finally got out, I think he did about a year or something like that. But stuff never changed. It didn't change until later on in life, maybe about 5 or 10, 6 years later.
Did he ever abuse you?
No. I got into 1 or 2 fist fights with him when I got older.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I was out of the service then. I was about 18 and 19, and I remember she had went down to the bar and was just
What branch
sitting
of the military were you in?
Military. The Army.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I was out. It was either just before I went or just after I got out, and I was staying with them. And I came home, and he had punched her in the stomach, and she was doubled over. And I grabbed him, and I hit him, and we started fighting. And my mother was extremely protective, and we wound up grappling, and she took a hammer and hit him over the head with a hammer, and we ran out in the street, and my father was throwing bricks at us. Yeah, down the street.
That's dramatic.
Oh, my God, yes. So, I mean, if that was anything that might have been a catalyst, I've never been a person to strike a woman or to, physically abuse a woman because I saw a lot of that coming up as a kid.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that helped me to become the addict that I was, but that I never forgot that.
Was that the only type of abuse that you saw growing
In the
up?
household?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
So nothing else.
No.
So looking back, do you remember the first time you ever got loaded, and what was it?
Well, yeah, I started smoking reefer. I had a cousin.
I'm sorry, that kind of dates you right there.
Oh my God.
Reefer.
Yeah, marijuana. I started smoking reefer, but I had been dibbling and dabbling in cough syrup and pills. That was the rage when I was coming up and I was in high school. Yeah, cough syrup and Tumenols, I think is what they were called.
What is Tuminol?
Tuminol is some kind of downer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know what I was
I
doing.
think it's Truanol.
Tumenols. Okay.
I need to know
We
what
call them
this is.
Tumenols.
Josh is going to look it up.
Yeah. We call them Tumenols. And I experimented with those, but I didn't really like those. And my cousin, who introduced me to 2 of the drugs, first she introduced me to marijuana or reefer because she was selling it.
It's a barbiturate.
Tumenols. Yeah. And we used to take it with cough syrup and Tuminol to get loaded.
So I just want to clear, the cough syrup then had codeine in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember
with
cough syrup was-
Robitussin.
yeah,
With the
codeine.
Robitussin AC, and you take it with Tumenols, and you get loaded.
Yeah.
But you get real fucked up, dude. Codeine and fucking barbiturates, yeah.
Yeah, you get
That'll spin
loaded,
ya.
man. And it started with that. But then when Doll, my cousin, she started selling reefer and introduced me to smoking reefer. This was before I went into the service. And
Did you get so you got loaded before the service?
Yes.
And then you got loaded in the service?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So even more so.
Yes.
You know what I forgot to ask you?
Go ahead.
When's your clean date? How long do you have?
Oh, 31 years.
Yeah.
31. And 1993, October 12th, 1993 is when I got clean. 31 years.
Nice.
But it took off when I went to, I was smoking reefer because of Doll, my cousin.
Yeah.
You know, she was a diva, you know, that she loved living large. And she made good money, but she just splurged it, you know, and mink coats and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but I looked up to her.
Hey, look at me.
Yeah, hey, look at me. You know, and she was a diva. She knew people like Red Fox and Moms Mabley and things like that. And so I followed her. And then I got drafted and went to Vietnam. You know, well, first I went to West Point, New York. And I used to smoke, you know, plenty of reefer there, you know, run back and forth. And I was bringing reefer up to West Point and sell it to, not to cadets, but to Army personnel.
Oh, so you had principles then.
Yes.
I'm not going to sell to cadets because that would be wrong.
Well, if they call it what it was,
Yeah,
I didn't
no.
know what it was at the time. I just stayed away from the cadets, you know, and I had enough people that was in the service. You
Yeah.
know, we had cooks and other MPs that were police. We had cooks. We had other support personnel that was in the military, you know, and a lot of them smoked, and so I was able to,
Yeah.
you know. And then when I went to Vietnam, oh my God, I was in hog heaven then, you know.
Is that where you met? Did you do heroin?
Not until after I got out, but I
Really?
did do
Because isn't that like
opium. I did
okay?
opium.
That
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got loaded in opium, so that was sickening. You know, I remember going down to Papa John's out on the river, and you go into Papa John's and they lay you down on a cot, put the pipe in front of you, you give him a certain amount of money, and he just stuffs the pipe, man, and you just get loaded. But I didn't like it.
You
as
didn't
much.
like it?
I didn't like it as much, no. And in Vietnam, they had the best reefer. I keep calling it reefer because that's what I grew up in.
Yeah.
They had the best reefer that I have ever had. I heard about the stuff here in California, but I don't know if anybody has ever smoked the stuff as good as I got in Vietnam. Okay? And it used to come in packs, like smoking cigarettes. I could buy
really?
it, like a pack of 20 was $2. Yeah, and I
Oh,
tried
the
to
good old
smoke up all
days.
I could. And I sent my cousin Doll back a box about that big, full, wrapped up in a towel and sprayed it with aftershave lotions and stuff like that and mailed it back to her. And she made an awful lot of money off of it, you know, and I continued to get loaded. My cousin, she talked a lot. She was a diva. She was one that see me, you know.
Hey, look at me.
Hey, look at me, yeah. And that eventually cost her old man, you know, a couple of years in jail because of that, you know. I came back from Vietnam with 10 cigarette packs of 20 inside of a radio. I had took the guts out of a radio and I put it all in. And you gotta
You're a
remember now.
smuggler.
Yeah, I was an MP. You know, I was a military policeman. You know.
And a dope dealer.
Well, I wasn't a dope dealer.
Oh.
You know, I wasn't a dope dealer. I was a dope smoker. You know, but everybody in the building was dope smokers. I didn't deal. I just sent Doll back that box. You know, and it got through.
Can I ask you, was Vietnam traumatic for you? Did you see
No, I didn't see anything and I didn't do anything. I was an MP. I didn't live out in the bush. I lived in an air-conditioned hotel. You know, that's where they housed us up at. I had Mama San that I paid $20 a month, and she starched in my uniform and polished my gear that I had to wear, and you know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I lived large. The only time I seen any action was I was getting loaded up on the roof of the building we lived in, and I could see in the helicopter shooting at each other.
Oh, really?
But I never did anything. Yeah, it was just after Tet, which was a major offensive, when I got there.
Yeah.
And so the only action I ever seen was we were being shipped off to our duty stations after inspection, and we all piled into this 2.5 ton truck to be dropped off at individual stations And on the way, the biggest thing that happened, well, a couple of things did happen. The guy driving the truck ran over Mama San and hit her, and he kept going. You know, that was kind of traumatic to see that happen. You know, to see Mama San fly off to the side, and he just kept going. He didn't give a damn about her. And then the next thing that I did, well, two things I did see. I saw a guy kill himself by accident, you know. He mishandled the M45, okay? And we were standing in line at the armory. The armory was upstairs on the second floor, and we were getting off duty, and we had to turn our weapons in. And I carried the 45 and the M16 rifle. So you take the magazine out of the M16.
And this guy killed himself?
He with the 45. And so we're all in line going up the stairs to the armory, and there's a procedure that you have to do. You know, you click and take the magazine out, and then to make sure that there's no round in the chamber.
Yeah.
This guy was so loaded, right, that he did it backwards, and he put a round in the chamber, clicked the magazine, and you have to
Dry
make
fire.
sure, right? And he dry fired like that, pow. But real quick, bang, you do this every day, you know, and he dry fired and blew the back of his head off. And I'm standing there, and he's falling down the stairs, and we're wondering, what the hell is going on? And he fell downstairs, and then he found out he blew the back of his head off with it.
Yeah, that'd be traumatic.
That was traumatic, you know. And then there was another guy that I was pretty close to, and we got loaded quite a bit. And he was so loaded, but he wasn't an MP. He was what they call a security guard, an SG. He got loaded, and he came outside. Now, you have to realize that the streets of... I was in Saigon. Mm-hmm. And some of the streets of Saigon are massive, like the El Camino, but they're full of people, motorcycles, and those little small cabs going back. They're full of them, especially during rush hour. And so he came out on his position, and he had this big M50 machine gun. And I guess he didn't secure it right. And when he put it on the cement kiosk, because we were in kiosks outside the guarding buildings, it went off. And he couldn't grab it in time, so it's just... and it's mowing people down.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and I'm coming down, you know, to go get into the truck, and I see this. They're just mowing people down on motorcycles, shooting up cabs and stuff like that. That might have been considered traumatic.
That would
be.
be.
To see that. And, you know...
any of that stuff, like in particular, you think about like you got extra loaded. Did that
course.
trigger like not wanting to see that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
anymore?
We were sad. We would get loaded. Well, we got loaded every day. You know, it was so cheap. Yeah. And I always had plenty, you know, and so it wasn't unusual for us to get loaded.
Yeah.
You know, we had plenty. I mean, but I really never did anything. I never fired my weapon. I never had any activities. You know, I can't ever say. So I've had friends that have went to Vietnam and came back and they were shot out mentally.
Yeah.
I didn't go through any of that, man.
So when you got out, how did your addiction take off?
Gradually. And, I got out and I brought the 10 packs back, you know, inside. And then you could break those up. And I started selling them, but my cousin wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. You know, she wore a path out to my door damn near every night coming, you know. And they call me Larry. Larry, she's coming. And so I ran through that within several months. But I had a connection and I started selling reefer. Right? And then my cousin, the same one doll, she started selling cocaine. Right? And she introduced me into sniffing cocaine. And I liked it. And I started sniffing cocaine.
I like how you said that. And I liked it.
Oh, I did. I liked it, you know. And
I did cocaine, and I liked
started
it.
sniffing. And then I tried to sell. Well, I wasn't very good, but I tried to sell it, you know. And she was doing all right. And then, I mean, eventually, this went on for about another year or so. And then eventually, this girl had me start shooting. She told me how you would make you feel. And in the beginning, I didn't feel it. But after a while, I started feeling it. and then it progressed into that I needed to be able to come down because I had some exposure to a guy that worked for CBS. And he worked in New York. I lived in New Jersey. And he worked for CBS, and I met him. And he was getting this real good cocaine. But at that time, I had started shooting it, but I didn't have an antidote, and it was real good. And then the same girl that got me introduced to shooting cocaine, she told me, well, if you shoot some heroin, it'll bring you back down. And speedball. And exactly. And so, cool. And so I started shooting the heroin afterwards. And then somewhere along the line, I found out about speedballs.
That's funny that like we're sitting at the table and both Vickies are sitting here in the peanut gallery and they go speedballs.
That's exactly right. That's what happened. I started shooting speedballs.
That was my preference at the end for me too, was up and down at the same time.
Such an expensive habit.
Sure it
Well,
is.
see, I was selling good
You
cocaine,
lose track.
top-notch cocaine,
More up, more
right?
down, more up, more down, more up.
And then I got strung out on speedballs. And at that time, my old man, my father, had got me a job working down the port of New York and New Jersey, working down there.
After you got out,
After I got out of the service.
yeah, shooting speedballs.
Yeah, well, I was shooting speedballs. Then I was hiding. I just was snorting. And then I was snorting cocaine and heroin. Then it progressed to speedballs. But I was working, and had a good job. And eventually wound up blowing that. I had become a dispatcher. And my boss, who was in the car company I worked for, those car companies that carried cars on them, 7 or 8 in the car, from Baltel Drive away. I worked for them down at the Port Newark, at the port. And the boss that I had, he lived in New Jersey, but he was from Michigan. So every weekend, he would go back to Michigan, right? And so I had old beat up hoopty, and he would say, well, tell me, Steve, you could take my car and use my car over the weekend. So he gets a nice Chrysler or whatever it was, So I was doing that for a while, and I eventually got busted, buying cut for the cocaine in a drugstore. And then, he had to take his car back. By that time, I was full-blown stuck out. And eventually I started doing stick-ups. Even though I was working, I wasn't out of a job, but I couldn't keep up with my
What
my
do you
habit.
mean by stick-ups? Like you're
Armed
robbing,
robberies.
Armed robberies.
Yeah, like
I started
gas
with-
stations and stuff,
Well,
grocery stores.
no. Well, eventually it turned out. It started out with a motel. I'd go at nighttime and go stick up a motel and scare the shit out of a clerk. And I have a gun. Scare the shit out of a clerk and take the money. And the end, when I first got caught, it was one night in my own car. I went to rob this motel, and I did, and I got away. But I guess they announced it on the radio, and an off-duty cop saw my license plate, right? And he followed me. And I went all through what they call Weequahic Park to get to my house. Success. I had the money, and I think I went and I got a package and I came home. 2 days later, they raided my house and they busted me. This was the first time I got arrested, for using. And my family was all supportive, My cousin Doll, who was a wheeler dealer, she put up a house that she didn't even own. You know what those things do, Vicky.
Yeah, that's the way we do it.
She put up a house she didn't own and bailed me out, and I got out and I was living in a luxury apartment, and they wanted to throw me out, and they did. They told me I had to get out. I couldn't stay there because I had swarms of police coming, when they busted me. And so I moved in with a friend of mine, and then I started selling little packages of heroin and cocaine. And I was working with a guy, that he had 2 cars. He had a 98 and he had a Cadillac. And I didn't have a car then. but they had took my car. And he used to let me drive his Cadillac. And unbeknownst to me, that the police used to see him riding around, then they saw me driving his Cadillac, so they kept an eye on me, right? And I guess they had figured me out. And one day, right, I didn't have the Cadillac, but this might have been 4 or 5 months after I had initially got arrested. I'm walking, and I'm at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and I see the detectives riding by, right? So I got dope on me. And so I see him looking, and evidently they knew who I was because they had seen me riding around in Ed's Cadillac.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't own the Cadillac, but they saw me driving his Cadillac. And so I saw him go down the street and turn around. So I went over and I dropped it. I had it in a penny envelope, a couple of bindles of dope, dropped it over there. And the funny thing is that when it landed, it stood up, straight up against a mailbox. So they came back and they jumped out and they searched me. I ain't got nothing on me, man. And they told me they knew me. Where's your Cadillac? Blah, blah, blah. You know, we know you. We've seen you. I ain't got no Cadillac, man. I don't have no car, right? And they started looking around and they went over there about as far as and here to that gate or maybe a little bit further, and they saw the pad, they picked it up and they gave it to me. You know, they knew, they said it was mine, they gave it to me, and bingo, I was back in jail. This time, my mother and them wouldn't come to see me. They wouldn't come, you know, it was just too soon. You know, first of all, they didn't, I got locked up. They didn't, they felt like, well, he needs to stay in there and learn his lesson. You know, Doll didn't have another house to put up.
Which she didn't have in the first place, was
Which
somebody
she didn't
else's.
have in the first place.
Where just like this progression kept going?
Over
so,
and over and over.
So it was many, many years of this?
Many, many years of the same thing.
What year did you get clean?
93.
93?
And what year was the Cadillac?
72.
So fucking many years then.
Many years.
Yeah.
1972 is the first time I got arrested. And it started a cycle of going back and forth to the penitentiary.
20 years, 19 years.
In New Jersey, and then coming out here and doing the same thing all over again.
You went to prison in California.
I went to prison in New Jersey 3 times, and I went to prison in California 3 times.
And so the third time in California, was that near the end of where you stopped getting loaded?
Oh, hell no. Oh, in California?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was after the 3rd time in California.
Did you get loaded once you got out of the 3rd term in California?
In California? Yeah. I did. And I was out of the penitentiary. And I was working. And by then, I was with a woman, and we had a child, right? And I was working. Remember, you got to remember now, I had the capacity to work.
Sounds like
You
it.
know, and I was working at it. You know, and I was with her, and I was working. But at that time now, I had stopped shooting heroin and cocaine, and I started smoking crack cocaine.
So you went from speedballs to crack.
Yes. It was the AIDS epidemic. And I share this in my story, you know, that what had happened was I was still shooting speedballs. And I remember going, it was at the height of the AIDS epidemic in the early 90s. Right, like 91 or something like that. And I went up to East Palo Alto, the cop, but I didn't have an outfit. You know what an outfit is.
Sharing
right?
needles.
I did. And so, but I wasn't one to do that if I could help it. And so I found a guy that had a needle in a bag, right? And I paid him $2 for it. And then when I bought it, I realized the bag had been torn and he had used it. But I was so desperate to get loaded, you know, fuck it, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I got loaded. And I was miserable after that. I mean, miserable. I was so afraid that I might get AIDS. People I knew were dying. I was afraid. And I said, you know, I'm not going to stick another needle in my arm anymore, you know. But I started smoking crack, you know, to replace the high. I had to do something, you know.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, I'm not done doing drugs. I'm just done doing them like this.
And I started smoking crack. And I went on. Now, I didn't smoke crack for a long time. You know, I mean, I didn't have a long run. I smoked crack on a regular basis, but I did not have a long run.
So where was the end?
Well, and I've heard this story. You guys have heard it before. I got fired from two jobs for stealing within 6 months. I worked down at the IBM as a contractor, cabling contractor, and I one time I worked for this company and I stole copper cable and to get loaded. And I stole copper cable. I take the copper cable to the scrapyard, right? I would be able to drive up to East Palo Alto, buy enough to get loaded, and maybe get a bag of potato chips or two, and hopefully put some gas in my car and come back. And I got caught doing that. The guy that I know, he came in, he saw me putting a big roll of cable in the back of my car. And so I quit. I got fired, But I got hired at another company. And I was working down at IBM down there on Cottle. And we were working there for a good little while. And I was going down in the basement of IBM of different buildings, and they have a ton of buildings down there. And when I got down there in the basement, I was like in hog heaven, man. They got all these cables down there, man, so I just cutting cables. Whap, fat ones, right? Cutting copper cables, right? And I didn't get enough to fill up the trunk of my car. And I would take them to the scrapyard, do the same thing over and over. Unbeknownst to me is that, I don't know why I didn't know, but I was too busy getting loaded. Unbeknownst to me was that they had started an investigation why all these buildings are going down.
I was just thinking of that, like you're cutting all this cable.
It was live cables?
Yeah. Some of them were live, some of them were dead. I knew where some dead ones were.
None of them were blowing up on you when you were cutting them?
No, this was just network cables.
Oh, God.
No, they weren't electrical cables. These were network cables.
Okay.
Right? And phone cables. A lot of them I could trace, and I knew they were dead. Over the years, they had not been working. I could trace them, but I had got so bad, man, I was getting the fat ones. I was cutting them down. The 25 pair and the 50 pair of cables.
Yeah.
That was more copper. And so I was knocking out different networks, and I didn't know it. I mean, if I thought about it, I would have knew it, but I didn't really care. And so they were looking to see what the hell is going on, right? And this went on for about 3 weeks or a month. And then one day it got so bad, I was in a telephone room in one of the buildings in IBM upstairs in one of the telephone rooms, and I could see all these cables that weren't being used, right? They were there. And so I just started cutting to get me enough to get in. And it just so happened that day that somebody opened the door to the telephone room and saw me, and they closed the door and left. And I knew I was caught, So I finished stealing my cable, all that I needed, and I put it in my trunk, and I left, and I never came back. So then what happened was the company that I was working for, they said they're calling for me at IBM. They want to know, where I'm at, why I'm not coming to work. IBM had, right? And so I said, I'm not coming back there. And they said, then they got a call, and IBM said, well, we would like you to come down and talk to us about what you've been doing. And see, what they thought that I had been working for Xerox or somebody, or maybe I was an international spy or something like that. Sabotage. They did. They honestly thought they didn't know.
They didn't know anything about drug addicts.
And they didn't know anything about drug addicts. Exactly right. And so the guy...
Did this lead you to get clean?
No. The catalyst for me to get...
Where's that?
That did not lead me. After I resolved that, IBM decided... they took pictures of me. And they had me on camera, right? And I didn't know that. And they had already filed a charge with me, but they didn't pursue it. So the guy told me, that we just want to know what was going on. And then once they found out I was this dope fiend that was just stealing copper cable to get loaded with, they backed off. Okay? Now I'm fired. I'm fired from 2 jobs within 6 months. I'm home. We got a 1-year-old son, but I still want to get loaded. And now I filed for unemployment. I'm waiting for unemployment check come, and it hasn't come yet. It was one. I maybe had gotten 1 or 2 checks, but this one I was waiting for. And so the guy told me, we just want to know what was going on. And then once they found out I was this dope fiend that was just stealing copper cable to get loaded with, they backed off. Okay? Now I'm fired. I'm fired from 2 jobs within 6 months. I'm home. We got a 1-year-old son, but I still want to get loaded. And now I filed for unemployment. I'm waiting for unemployment check come, and it hasn't come yet. It was one. I maybe had gotten 1 or 2 checks, but this one I was waiting for. I took my son to my dope dealer, right? And I left him there so I could go out and boost something and sell it. And it went out and boosted some toilet paper, some meat, and some other shit like that, right? So I could sell it and come back and pay him so I could get my son back and have enough to go get loaded. And I did that. And on this last time, I had brought him home and I was smoking. Now, remember, I didn't tell you that my significant other at the time, she had 5 years in the other fellowship. Okay? And she had 5 years. She didn't know what I was really doing. She had no idea. I brought him home, and I sat him down in the living room, or in his bedroom, and I surrounded him with toys so he could play with only one. And I put a big hit up on the pipe, lit it, and passed out. And when I woke up, he was standing over me, smiling and patting me on the face. And the pipe fell over and burned a hole in our white shag carpet. You know, it wasn't a big hole. It was a hole about something like that. It burned a hole in the shag carpet, you know. When I used to share early for a lot of years, when I used to share, I used to make it sound like it was a towering fucking inferno. You know, I was good at that. Well, the women would, when I would tell them how the fire started, you know, I would get that. So I was addicted to that. So for a lot of years, I kept telling it like that. But it was a little small hole.
Okay.
But what happened when Sharon came home, she saw it, right? And she wanted to know what happened. And for whatever reason, I fessed up.
You told the truth?
I told the truth.
Subconsciously looking back, do you think maybe you were checking out help? Like maybe you told her because you wanted to get help?
I don't know why I told her, but I told her.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say that, Kevin, but I know I told her right then and there.
Is that when you got clean?
Well, I had to go smoke my dope first because, I mean, I still had dope in my pocket, right? And so I said to this is what I had been doing. You know, I've been smoking crack cocaine, you know. She said, well, okay, we need to get you some help, right? And I said, okay, well, look, I got this crack in my pocket. I'm going to go out in the garage and smoke it. And she said, oh, hell no, right? And we had a big row about that, you know, and I won. I went out in the garage and I smoked my dope and I came back in and she said, if you don't go get some help tomorrow, you got to get the fuck out. Okay? That's what she said. So that next morning, remorseful and everything, I got up and we talked about it. And it was, you know, it became clear maybe I could go to the VA and
Because you're
talk
a
to
vet,
them.
yeah.
Because I'm a vet. And so that's what we did. You know, we went up to the VA. It wasn't the next day. It was about a day or two later. You know, we went up to the VA. We made an appointment. We went up there and I met the counselor. I was just at his retirement Friday. He just retired Friday.
The counselor, yeah.
Danny, yeah.
Nice.
And we met with Danny, and he interviewed
He just
me.
retired from the VA?
He just retired. Yeah, he had 38 years clean.
Oh.
Yeah, he just retired. And I met with him, and when he got done interviewing me, and he went and talked to the other counselors, and I just seen Harold, the other counselor, today at the meeting, and the other guy was Manny. They were counselors up there. He said, okay, we're going to accept you in this program if only to give your family a break. Okay? And so they accepted me in that, I think it was a 6 months program. I think it was 6 months. And that's when my recovery took off.
Is that
back.
day one then?
That was day one. Yeah.
Nice.
They took me in that particular day.
So, yeah, so for day one, let's
I was on a Thursday, an alumni night.
Yeah, that's funny you say it like that. What about some of the fears that you had, like from getting clean? Can you talk about that? You remember any?
I didn't know if it would really work, you know, but I didn't want to leave my house.
You had a fear that recovery wouldn't work for you?
I didn't know if it would really
Okay.
work for me. You know, I was going to do whatever it needed to do so I could get back to my house. It goes back to my background, and it took years for me to get honest about that. And that I grew up in the projects of Newark, New Jersey. 7th floor, you know,
Yeah.
piss and sink in the hallway, wine bottles all in the back, and stuff like that. And now here I find myself living with a woman who owns a house on a cul-de-sac with fruit trees in the back, and I got a kid, you know, I didn't want to lose my life. I loved that. And so whatever she needed me to do, I was going to do. So my motivations for coming into recovery was not necessary to get clean. It was so I wouldn't get kicked out of my house.
Yeah, you hear it a lot is whatever gets you here, right?
Yes, it was that.
I just didn't want to go back to prison.
Yeah, well, me neither, but I wasn't in that, you know, that wasn't part of it. The part of it was I didn't want to be put out of my house.
All right.
I was living large, man.
So you had a fear of not being able to go back to your home. So
well, she
you
told me, if you don't get this program, you can't come back.
Yeah. So you got clean to be able to go back to your home.
I did. But in the meantime, I began to get some clarity about who I was. You remember at that time, I was 46 years old. Okay? And I was tired, but didn't know it. Mm-hmm. I was really tired, but I didn't know it. But there was, and fortunately for me, as I told you, that was alumni night. And there was guys that came back that sat around in a circle and spoke to newcomers, right? And
like
gave
you.
them, like me, and told us, this is what you need to do. You know, and when they got around to me, Steve, why are you here? I'm talking out the side of my neck. I'm here to get my shit together and blah, 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 blah. And one of the guys said to me, Steve, you're 46 years old, man. You've been fired from 2 jobs within 6 months. You can't keep your ass out the penitentiary. And if you don't get this program, you ain't got nowhere to live. Maybe you need to change the way that you think. And that was one of the keys, you know, for me when he told me that, man. You know, I didn't like what he said. I definitely didn't like what he said, you know. But I listened.
So was that your biggest fear, is not being able to go back to your house?
That was at the time.
Yeah.
That was it.
Do you
That
have
was my only fear.
Do you have any fears today?
Oh, yeah. I'm afraid if I were to go get loaded, I'd kill myself. I mean, I got enough money in the bank, and I don't mean I'm
Yeah, but
rich, but I got enough money that I could kill myself.
Yeah, you're not afraid that you're going to go get loaded, though, are you?
No, but
Okay.
I mean, there's a fear there.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't continue to do this program, then I will get back in the spoon.
I guess that would be a healthy fear then, huh?
It is a healthy fear, undoubtedly. You know,
Any other fears? We're doing the 4-step now. We're getting into the questions. Fears, you know, like I had a fear of failure. Like, you know, if I failed staying clean, of course, just like you, I'd end up back in the places or dead. I knew I was going to commit suicide.
Sounds like the big one for him was just like not being able to get the life that he had back.
that was the biggest fear for me. You know, I am blessed to have had some things happen in my life, man, that I got a lot of my gifts and blessings in this program early. Okay, I mean, extremely early. When I was in the program, I got in touch with my conscience, you know, and I saw that to be a great gift.
That is, you're fortunate.
You know, I'm telling you, I know that, you know, that I got in touch with my conscience, man.
Can I ask you, did you stop committing crimes, even small crimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was it,
Yeah.
huh? Everything shut off.
Yeah, oh yeah, I went back. Yeah, I didn't need to. I went
great.
back, man. You know, I got arrested 18 months in
Clean?
being clean.
What was that for?
Wreckage. Remember when I told you I was stealing copper cable from
Oh,
them
yeah,
different
yeah,
places
yeah,
and they
yeah.
had me on camera? Yeah, I had a case. I got arrested.
That was a year and a half after you got
Yeah,
clean?
and I used to come to the meetings, and I came to the meeting. That was on a Thursday night. I was on the way to the VA, and I got arrested, right? And when by that time, with 18 months clean, I had already figured out that the problem was me and the way that I think, right? And I knew, you know, okay, I will never go back to the penitentiary again because I ain't doing the things that I was doing before.
Yeah.
It never crossed my radar screen that I would ever have to go back to the pen. But here I was with 18 months. I got arrested for some old shit. And my jacket was to always run. When I got arrested, I've been in the penitentiary 6 times, Kevin. My jacket was to always run, get out of town, find me, and arrest me. I did that over and over and over again. Now I'm in these rooms and they're telling me that I got to take responsibility for my own behavior. And people are telling me when I got up and shared, that happened on a Thursday night, when I got up and shared on a Saturday at that men's meeting that we used to go to, you attended, I got up and I shared that I had been arrested, for some old stuff. And that I was afraid. I now have some values and principles. How am I going to go back to the penitentiary talking about feelings? How am I going to go back to the penitentiary talking about trying to do the next right thing?
So did you turn yourself in?
Well, eventually, remember I got arrested.
Yeah.
Okay, eventually I had to go to court. Yeah, I didn't run.
Okay, that's.
I was told by different members in the program, man, and you could do this. That, and then one guy I remember I don't even remember who it was. One guy came up and told me, look, I was in jail for 5 years and I worked the program and I stayed out of trouble and it went right. Another guy told me his situation was similar, right? And he was walking the same path that I was walking and that he was just going to continue to do it. He said, if I could do it, you could do it.
Yeah. Didn't Chris Kay do like 20-something years down?
Chris Kane?
Yeah.
I know he did 10, something like that.
Yeah. So you did your time and all that and got out, but and so those were your fears. What about a reservation that you came in with?
I don't think that I had any real reservations, about not being able to do this program. Once I realized that I was the problem, once I realized that, it was my lifestyle that was causing me to be this way, wanting to get loaded, and I hadn't gotten loaded for a long time, I didn't really have any fears. I knew I was 46 years old. I knew that death was going to come. At that time, I was living back with my family. I had an opportunity to make amends to somebody that I owed some money to.
Yeah.
In my first 3 years, different blessings start happening to me.
What about a reservation before you got clean? Like maybe I'm not going to get clean because this might happen or something. Like when you were right at the tail end, when you were getting loaded still, but did you have reservations about getting clean?
No. I don't even think I ever considered it.
Yeah. That's what
I never considered it. So to have a reservation, you have to consider why would I use? I never considered getting clean. It wasn't until I went to treatment.
So fears, no real reservations.
I don't think I had any real reservations. I don't know, maybe some will come up, but I have no.
Yeah, okay.
I wasn't afraid of my parents,
like if a parent died, you'd still stay clean.
I had lost my grandmother in the disease, who I love very much. I had lost my aunt in the disease, and I knew my mother and father were going to die sooner or later.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bring them back. I think one of the blessings for me was that I got clean at such an older age. You dropped your thing. I got clean at 46 years old, so I had an understanding about life and what happens.
Gotcha.
In life. I think that's what it was.
All right. Well, when you got clean, did you come in? Did you have any resentments, like triggered you to get loaded, or you can remember when you first got clean?
Well, I remember when I did my first 4-step. If that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't graduate until I did the 4-step from the program. And I remember the very first thing, it was minute, but the very first thing, I wanted to make amends to a guy who I hated for many years, and every now and then I felt like a punk. I felt like, him and I had got into a fight in grammar school. And it was on a rainy day, and we were fighting. And back east, you boxed. How good you can box.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were boxing, and Ricky Mitchell, he started getting the best of me, right? And I told you it was a rainy day, so I grabbed the guy's umbrella, and I shook it, and like I was going to hit him with it. So he grabbed somebody's umbrella, and he clocked me upside the head together, and put this scar on the side of my head. And for most of my adult life, I hated him.
So that was a resentment?
I hated him for that.
Yeah.
Because he hit me in the head, man, and sent me to the hospital. I had to get stitches up here. And I hated him. And one of the first resentments that I had was when I started taking a look at the fourth step, was him. And then by writing about that resentment and looking into it, I eventually realized that, I created that situation. Because I grabbed the first umbrella and I didn't do anything with it. And he grabbed the umbrella and he did something with it. So if I was to really peel the onion back, I'm the one that created the entire situation. So that's one resentment, with the fourth step.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of others. Mostly regrets.
Yeah.
Mostly regrets that I have.
Well, the resentment part, a lot of times, like for me, and I had the conversation with Josh before too, and we'd say like we don't, I don't have any resentments, but like 30 minutes into the conversation, into the episode, like, oh well, there's a resentment. Oh, I didn't actually put my finger on that, but I guess that's a resentment, and so that comes up a lot where we go, oh, I guess I have a resentment because like a lot of resent what's going on in the world today, or whatever.
Well, that part definitely. I resent what's going on.
That's what I'm talking about. Like resentments creep up, and you might not even, visualize that you have them.
I resent myself for a lot of the things that I did while in the disease.
But let me ask you: did you forgive yourself?
Yeah, over time, I have. I wrote about them.
That's good.
I wrote about, we talked about me starting out robbing motels and then eventually robbing a bank. And then it got so bad I robbed a candy store. Right? That's how low it went for me.
Did you get candy? Really? You went to the candy store and you robbed it?
I went there to do what I did and was to rob this lady around the corner. Right, early in the morning, I wanted to get loaded, and I went there, and she was there, and she served me, and I pushed her away and went and took the money out the cash register and ran. I didn't have a car. The trouble is, she followed me. She ran. She followed me. She's an old lady too. I couldn't get rid of her.
She wanted her candy back.
And she followed me all the way down. I would say as far as from here to the meeting. Right? And I'm running, and she's down there and screaming, huffing and puffing. And I guess somewhere along the line, she had the cop car. And I guess they turned around. And I had just got to my destination where I was going, where I was living, and I went up the back stairs. And as I was the back door was closed. And I tried to get into the house, and I couldn't get in because the back stairs was going. I could hear the police down there looking around, and I'm laying down in cat shit and cat piss, trying to keep the cat quiet, so he's not talking, not meowing and nothing, or screaming and scratching at me, and it's got babies over there. And I could hear the police, I don't know, let's go up there. And one guy said, I ain't going up there, and blah, 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 blah. And eventually they left. And I got up. I've always regretted that I did that I stole from that lady. I've always regretted that. I mean, that's one of the things. I resent myself for some of the shit that I did.
You know what? That's a good lead into guilt and shame.
I had a lot of guilt and shame.
So is that sounds like you have guilt about that?
Yes.
I remember having a conversation with Steve about the difference between guilt and shame. Do you remember having that conversation with him?
Probably.
His perspective on what shame is and what guilt is. Shame is like people are telling you that you're no good, you're not good enough. And guilt is you feeling bad about an action that you did.
Well, the shame was that my mother, even up until she died the last days, she never really thought that I had stayed clean. And she died with about 17, 18 years of me being clean.
No kidding. So that whole time she never thought you were clean?
I don't think she did.
Wow.
My mother was very untrusting. and I know what the causes were. I could tell you more about her and what, than myself. She was brought up one of 7 kids, and she was the stepchild.
Oh,
And 3 or 4 of her sisters and brothers used to give her hell because they didn't like her father,
yeah.
right? And they gave her hell. And she was very untrusting and not forthcoming. My mother didn't tell me she loved me until she died, just before she died.
So that shame was around your mom.
Yeah.
What about guilt? Like looking, I know we've done a lot of work and we've forgiven ourselves for a lot of stuff, but like coming into the program when you were new, did you come in with some guilt?
Well, I felt guilty that I stole, from, I felt guilty that I caused my mother's house to be robbed by somebody. I looked up to a guy in the jail when I got busted that second time, and I had to spend a long time before I went to trial. And I didn't go to trial anyway; I copped out. But there was a guy who I looked up to. I didn't have any values or principles. I looked up to him, and I was telling him about my mother and father, where I knew where they kept the money at. I would never steal from them, and it was in the closet in the house.
And that
right?
guy got out and robbed her?
And the guy got out, and him and another guy broke in and stole. And my mother and father thought that I'd done it. I was working at the time. When this guy got out, he got out after me, and I was working, and somehow I got out. I don't know. I stayed in there about 6 months, and eventually I got out.
So they robbed the house?
And they robbed the house. I didn't do it.
And you felt guilty about that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because I knew who did it. Because they knew exactly where to go.
You forgive yourself for that?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. Well, that's good. Any other big thing you think of? Shame and guilt?
I have a lot of guilt about the people that trusted me,
And you took advantage of?
And I took advantage of them, yeah. I have a very good friend and my 40-year friend. I made amends to him. But the first time I got arrested here in California for stealing copper cable and had to go to the penitentiary, people didn't believe it. They couldn't believe that that's what I had done. And Jim, my very good friend, he stood by me the whole time. He would come to see me in jail and stuff like that. And then I had to go to Vacaville for 2 years or something like that. And he stayed in touch. And when I got out of Vacaville, was leaving, he sent a truck up from the job to come and pick me up. A couple of country boys, I know we call them Hayseed from Iowa.
Yeah.
They're real cool. Well, him and Hayseed and Kenny, I liked him very, very much. He's a naive kid, but And they came and picked me up, and then Jim gave me a job back. When I got home, came home. He invited me over to his dinner to his house with his new wife, and eventually he gave me money to buy new clothes and stuff like that. And I accepted everything, and then I eventually started stealing and started going, and I wound up going back to the penitentiary with a new case. Right.
So that would be that would cause shame.
It caused a lot
guilt.
of shame, man. Fortunately, I had got an opportunity with him. After I had been clean for about 4 or 5 years, him and his partner had separated, right? From the business. They own the business like you do, an independent contractor, and they own the business, and they had separated. And Jim had moved down south, and Pete kept the business going up here. And I stayed in touch with Pete. And Pete told me that Jim was coming up for a birthday party. And Jim had been on the balls of his ass. He broke.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But he was still living, but he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just broke.
So you were able to do something for
I
him?
was able to come to that party and bring him a check for a couple $1,000, and pay him. He cried right there. He cried. And he's still one of my closest friends.
That's awesome.
He's still one of my closest friends.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
What about some consequences from your past that you still live with today?
Well, the first one was when I got arrested, right, for I was on camera from IBM and one of
Yeah,
the companies.
18
That's the
months
first
clean.
one. The second one was that I really had some consequences with. My choices as far as my kid's mother, and I don't share this too often. Steve knows about it, or knew about it. I always regretted that I got into a relationship with her. I got two beautiful kids behind it, but it was not an honest relationship. I was a dope fiend. She was in charge of a business school, Sawyer Business School over in Trimble. She was a director.
Okay.
Her husband was my dope shooting partner. Okay? And she wanted to have a baby. And he couldn't produce. So she hooked up with me. And I wind up going behind his back and having a relationship with her. And they produced my first son, Larry. Right? And then she eventually kicked him out and I moved in. And she had 5 years with the other fellowship. And we were together for 5 years and we produced another kid, my daughter. Right? I've always regretted that I did what I did.
You
Right.
mean, yeah.
As far as like the consequence of having to deal with that after you got clean?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. And in turn, what happened, something similar happened to me. Let's see.
Well, is that a consequence of your actions? Or is it that if what you're thinking of? Is
What
just
comes
a
around goes around.
Yeah, it's just
sometimes.
a byproduct of, of
What
your
comes
actions.
around goes around. And what happened was that a very good friend and one of my closest friends got into a relationship with my kid's mother, and it broke my heart. And I had to really work through that. And he was one of I had my sponsor before Steve and him were two of my closest friends. And he got with her. And my kids were old enough where they didn't like it. But what could they do? I think they were both in high school.
Yeah.
Right? And what hurt me the most was the fact that he did this in front of my kids. And that really tore me up.
Is there anything that you're living with, the consequences, if you're still living with today? Like a lot of people, the felonies, did they ever cause you to not get a job or anything like that? Or anything along those lines, the Hep C?
Well, I did have Hep C.
From your past consequences.
From my past consequences, yeah, from my using, but because of Steve, I was able to find a path to get rid of it. Because he did. Mm-hmm. And then he coached me and he told me this is what he did, and he coached me into going. I had been thinking about doing it for years, but the doctors kept telling me, just hang on, you're not that bad yet, there's a new medicine coming. And at the VA, they were pretty good, and then when Steve did it, and got rid of it, was gone, he said, do it. And I did it, and I followed his path. And I'm real gratified that I did. Now, about 8-9 years ago, one of the last things that happened to me as a result of my using was some old stuff came up from when I was in the disease. Mm-hmm. And back in New Jersey, when I was on a high-speed chase, and I had back surgery, and I was on a high-speed chase, and I was driving, and the highway patrol was behind me, and I tried to get off the freeway, and I ran off at a toll booth, and I ran and knocked off a light pole, knocked it down, got busted, wind up, having a case, and stayed in jail for about almost half a year, and then they extradited me back to California, blah, 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 right? And then I got clean. And I had been clean about 15 years. And then the state of New Jersey, I was working, good job, project manager now, I'm doing real well.
Yeah.
State of New Jersey decided that they wanted their money.
After 15 years?
Something like that. It might have been even longer. Yeah. I was still working. Yeah.
All right.
It might have been longer. And
Wow.
so they put a hold on my driver's license. And so I talked to Steve, and Steve sent me to John, and he couldn't do anything for me. And then first he sent me to Frank. What's his name?
We don't need
Yeah.
we don't need names.
Okay. Well, he sent me to him, and then
Yeah,
he sent
thanks.
me, then we went to another guy. And then the second guy told me, you need to get a lawyer in New Jersey. But it just so happened that my wife, her sister's husband, has a daughter that's a lawyer in Philadelphia. So, I mean, I'm living good. I got money. So I hired her in Philadelphia. And she took care of it. She got it all squared away. But that's the last thing that came up
Oh,
for
that's
me.
cool.
They got me in touch with who I used to be. But from time to time, who I am comes up from time to time
Yeah, but without consequences.
without consequences. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, so we're at the point where we're going to ask about assets.
Okay.
So, I mean, and, it's hard for us to talk about ourselves in that way sometimes.
It's hard for me too.
So, what do you think are some of your assets?
Well, let's see. I try to be as honest as I possibly can. I don't know if I'm cash register honest, but I do the best that I can. I'm loyal. I believe in this program. I give it back. Like I was saying, I heard someone at a meeting last night said, I've been given the warmth of a fire that I didn't start. Okay, and my job is to put a log on that fire, and I do that.
Wow, I like that one.
Oh, I loved it when I heard it.
Yeah.
You heard it before?
No, I haven't.
I loved it, and I put a log on the fire, and I do that.
Yeah.
By supporting other people, by sponsoring guys. I'm faithful. I think I said honest to the best of my ability. I do what I say I'm going to do, which I never did before. I was the kind of guy before,
Reliable.
I'll be down there.
Yeah, reliable and dependable,
I try to be. I try very hard to be.
loving and compassionate.
And
I know that.
I make amends. If I hurt somebody, I not too long ago hurt my daughter's feelings, and I had to apologize and make amends to her. I had to remind her, that, and I got that from Vicky. I never said I was perfect. I said I was an addict, and I told her one of the things. A couple of years ago we were talking. I was at her house with my son, my youngest son, and my daughter. And my oldest boy back in New Jersey, he knew a lot about what I was like when I was in a disease. Because he was old enough. He was young, but he was old enough. And he was there when I was going in and out of the penitentiary in New Jersey and would come out and try to be Father of the Year and stuff like that. And he's been in the room with me when I was getting loaded. And, if I sat down to get loaded, he'd go and do this like this here. Because he knew what I was getting ready to do. He's seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the things he did was he would the two kids, when they were back in New Jersey on the occasion, they would say, "What was Dad like?" And he would give them little tidbits, right? And they couldn't believe it. Neither one of them have ever seen. Well, Larry at 1 year old, he saw me getting loaded when I burnt the hole in the carpet, but they couldn't relate. And so I think about 2 years ago, we were up at Esther's house, and that's when they asked me, with that, we asked Steve, now we ask you, tell us what it was like. And so I was able to share some things without, I heard Vicky say earlier, or Vicky say earlier about we need to go in all, I'm saying names, I'm sorry.
You're a name dropper.
Oh, well, that's true.
I'll get it. Don't worry about it.
You can cut it out,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah, I'll get it.
And about, I lost my thought now.
Well,
I don't need to go into details. I didn't need to go into a lot of scurvy details, but I let them know, that I'm not. Someone else says Susie Cream Cheese here, or
Yeah.
Little Lord Fauntleroy.
Did they come up with an asset for you? Is that
Well, they love me.
That was the original question, was about assets.
Well, I know that I'm loved, and I know I can give love. I know that.
There you go.
I know that I can give love, and I do give love.
Cool.
You know, I give love to my children and to my friends. I was talking with another person, you know, who told me that they love me, and I said, I know that because I feel it. You know, I learned that from another addict who I approached that I liked. The guy, he's gone now, you know, who I liked very, very much. And I wanted to be friends with him. And I told him so, you know, and he said, I know. And he said, and I said, how you know? He said, because I feel it. And I pay attention to that.
That's pretty cool.
So when another person told me that they loved me, I told them that I feel it. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, is there this part of the episode where if you could think of any, like, this crazy story about getting loaded or some insane thing that happened to you, you know, like, or just like one juicy morsel.
Something that stands out.
Okay. I told you my oldest son, he knows a lot. Okay?
Yeah.
And I used to come home from the penitentiary and take him from New Jersey to New York. Father of the year. You know, we would stop laughing. We would get on the bus, and this was a trip. And we would take the bus over to New York, and then the subway over to New York. And he was excited. He was only about 7, 8, if that old. And he was excited to spend the time with his dad, right? And I would leave him there, you know, outside waiting when I went into the house to cop. Right? And so I went in the house to cop, and in the meantime, he's sitting outside. And I decided I'm going to get loaded. Okay? And I get loaded, and now I don't have any more money left other than car fare to get back. So where I'm at in New York is one of these abandoned buildings where the guy sold me the dope at, right? But I go upstairs. He locks the door, puts on one of the New York bolt locks, and he locks the door. And I go upstairs to an abandoned building up there to get loaded. I find the water. I got my outfit. Boom. I get loaded. Now I ain't got no more money to really get loaded with. But this is an abandoned room downstairs where I knew he had his dope. The only way I was going to get in there was I decided to climb out of that 3rd floor window, hold on to the window sill. Now, I'm in New York, right? And one of those piss in the sink buildings, right? Down there is old garbage cans, old mattresses, all kind of abandoned shit, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hanging, and I decide to let go. And as I slid down, holding my feet, I caught the 2nd floor window ledge. And I was able to fight and pull myself up and fight. This was how ingenious an addict can do. And I was able to slide the window out, and I got in. Now I'm not sure where the dope is. And I'm looking around in an abandoned room, right? And finally I look at the shade, right? And somebody talked about rolled up dope. I look at the shade, and in the shade, right, I know that's where the dope is. It's in one of them, right? So I go to each window, and finally, I pull the shade, and boom, the dope falls out. I put the dope in my pocket, get out, unlock the New York lock, go downstairs, gather up my kid, and we go. And we catch the subway downtown. And we get to Penn Station. But I'm so anxious to get loaded, right, that I have him wait outside of the bathroom. And I go into the bathroom in Penn Station and draw up the water in those nasty toilets in Penn Station.
Toilet water?
Toilet water.
Yeah.
Right? I can't do it with all these people outside.
Yeah.
So I'm in the toilet, draw it up, boom, get loaded. The thing that I regret is I had no concern about what could have happened to my son. You know, and I always look back on that and thank God that nothing happened. He sat there and I came out spinning like a fucking top. You know, and then we got on the bus and we came back to New Jersey, you know. So If any
That's
story,
crazy.
any story I tell,
Yeah.
and that is one I never forget. That I did that, and I actually did that, Claude, like, oh, damn, name dropping again.
That's all right.
Yeah, cut it out, please. Cut it out.
I will.
I've had an adventurous life, man. You
Yeah.
know, I laugh at some of my friends' stories that I hear. I laugh. My wife says, you could write a book. And, every day when we talk, and sometimes I come from a meeting and I'll have a new story that a meeting rung a bell for me.
Right.
Remember
Yeah,
who
yeah.
I was, and the things that I did, and she's just amazed. She knows them all. But some of them she hasn't heard, and I give her a new one? Tell me. She's excited to hear it. But anyway, I don't know. I hope this turns out good for you, Kevin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we really appreciate you doing this for us.
Yeah, thanks for sitting down with us. Yeah.
Definitely.
I was nervous, and I asked
Yeah.
my friend,
Didn't act like
what
it.
was they nervous? And they told me yes in the beginning, but that it all turned out well.
It did.
And it's good to remember. One of the things I say all the time, and I've said it at meetings a lot of times, the key to my suffering is remembering. The beginning of the end of my suffering is remembering. And that's one of the reasons that I love going to meetings, because I can hear things and remember who I was.
Thank
and
God
so
for the newcomer, huh?
Huh?
Thank God for the
Yeah.
newcomer.
And that's why I go to Just for Day just about once a week.
That's very cool.
I love it.
Thank you, Steve. I love you very much.
Love you too, my friend.
And
I wouldn't do this for anybody else.
that makes me feel special. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Love
if
you
you ever
guys.
get a chance, check out our Friends Recovery podcast. There's the Anonymous podcast and the Living Clean podcast, or the OG podcast, also called the Recovery Cast. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Often you will hear addicts referring to a specific 12-step program or rehab. These are personal stories. We do not represent any of the programs.